CoinDesk is turning 10, so we're taking a look back on some of the biggest stories shaping the crypto industry from the last decade. Our next guest is here to discuss how the DAO hack back in 2016 changed Ethereum and crypto forever. Joining us now is Christoph Jentzsch, currently the CEO of corpus.ventures and also the founder of Slock.it, the Ethereum smart contracts company that developed the DAO. Christoph, welcome.
Welcome. Thank you very much.
Well, before we get into it, lay the foundation for us. Give us the brass tacks on what happened back in 2016 with the DAO hack.
So in very short, after we founded Slock.it, we needed money, so we thought about creating a token. But in the process of creating a token, we gave the token holders more and more rights to do things, like even keeping the money in the contract. They would vote on what was happening, and we ended up opening it up for everyone, so everyone could put money in and everyone could ask for money from the DAO, the decentralized autonomous organization. This was the idea. So the DAO raised about $150 million in Ether. So because of this, the Ether price went up. So at some point it was about $250 million. And then there was a hack. It was a bug in the smart contract, which allowed a hacker to withdraw around 1/3 of the Ether in the DAO. And then after that started a crazy time, sometimes called DAO wars. And long story, in the end, there was a hard fork, and now we have Ethereum Classic and Ethereum. Non-Ethereum, everybody who would put money into the DAO is able to withdraw his Ether. That's the short story, but of course, there's much more to it.
They've sort of, it seems at least, they suspect the person behind this hack. I mean, what are your thoughts on that, if at all, on who has been named or who has been suggested to be the person behind it? And do you think that there should be ultimately criminal charges brought?
Well, you know of the book Cryptopians by Laura Sheen. So she did actually investigate all of this, and she's claiming to have found the one who hacked the DAO, and I have no reason to not believe her based on what I know. But I also did not do any investigations myself. Actually, after the DAO hack happened and after hard fork, I completely stopped looking into the details. So that's why I can neither confirm nor deny any of this, but it seems like what Laura Sheen found out is correct. But when it comes to legal processes, so it's actually astonishing to me that even after the hack, there was not a single legal process, not against us or any investors, or if you call them investors or token holders or anybody somehow related to the DAO. And even now, I mean, I have got, after Laura Sheen published her book and also published the name of who she thinks is the hacker, I got one, like the FBI contacted me and wanted to have an interview with me. They didn't follow up. So I think something is happening, but I have not interviewed about it yet. So I don't know if there's something going on or not.
Do you think that the end result, this creation of Ethereum Classic, I mean, what's been your take on that? Do you think that was? Do you think that the way in which the Ethereum Foundation, that the Ethereum community handled the hack and the subsequent moves to basically give back some of the money and reset the clock, if you will? Or do you think that was the right way, or do you think that the Ethereum Classic folks have it right? Ultimately, what do you think is? I mean, I assume you're a bit biased, but it'd be nice to hear your opinion on it.
It's a super contentious topic. And back then, I mean, I was part of developing Ethereum in 2014. It felt like hurting my own baby. It was not mine, but I was just part of it. So it didn't feel right. But on the other hand, if you think more about this, everybody at any time can create a hard fork of any chain. Same as Bitcoin Cash or any other variants of it. So the same with Ethereum. Of course, anybody could create this hard fork, and everybody has the freedom of choice to say, I stay with Ethereum Classic or I go with Ethereum. And one thing which is very misunderstood, especially in the Bitcoin community, there was not a rollback of transactions, or there was no transaction which got reverted. In Ethereum, we have the state of the system, and thanks to some luck and how Ethereum is constructed, it was possible to only make a change in the DAO-related contracts. Basically, all the other apps were continuing. You could transfer Ether, and no transaction has been reverted. Only everything related to a DAO you would be able to, was moved into a new smart contract where everybody who had DAO tokens could send DAO tokens in and get Ether back. This was the change at a certain point in time. So it did not touch any of the other apps, which was super important. Like if, for example, let's take Mt. Gox. If for reverting Mt. Gox, you would need to revert the chain. In history. This is, of course, catastrophic, and nobody would ever even think about doing this. For Ethereum, you could only change the history kind of this one application. Not even history, just the future, to be more precise. So it was a little bit different than what sometimes people think it was. And also, luckily, it was not a precedent. People at the time worried that this was set a precedent, that every time a hack happened, they would call for a hard fork. After that, we had much bigger hacks. Look at the Polkadot multisig. Enormous amounts of Ether and many other hacks, and nobody seriously considered a hard fork ever again after the DAO. So it was luckily not a precedent.
Do you think I'm sorry, but do you think that's that because of the controversy that it took to get it done and the ultimate hard fork, do you think that the Ethereum community is like, look, we don't want to go through this again?
Partially, it was super hard, and it was such a consuming topic and so much discussion. That might be one reason. But I think the bigger reason is that shortly after the DAO, the DeFi ecosystem developed, and you have now stable coins and other, even gold-backed coins, and all kinds of tokens. If there would be a hard fork, every project would need to make a decision. This token is worth $1 on this chain, but not on the other. This token is worth a gold pound on this chain, but not the other. So all the DeFi apps were so intervened that to make a hard fork at that point is practically impossible. So because of this app infrastructure or DeFi ecosystem, which was evolving at the time. So, and this is also today why I think it's not feasible to have any controversial hard fork again, which is not a purely technical upgrade as we saw with, let's say, proof of stake.
You mentioned the FBI contacted you, and you know there's this criticism in the industry against law enforcement and regulators not really understand what's going on behind the scenes. What kind of questions were they asking you?
Actually, not any. They just contacted me to talk to me. So I made my number, the telephone number, email, and so on available, and didn't get any contact again. That's why I'm saying I guess there's someone doing something with maybe suing the DAO hack or not, but I don't know. That's so no question asked so far. Even with the SEC report, because there was an SEC report coming out about a year later, and they did not interview us, did not ask us any questions, so no contact whatsoever with any legal entity or like enforcement entity in the US.
Interesting. Lawrence, I think you're about to ask something.
Oh, no. Well, I kind of wanted to ask your view now of Ethereum. I mean, we've seen some interesting moves, obviously, since, of course, the early days of Ethereum. It's now moved, of course, to proof of stake versus proof of work, and that was a big thing. I kind of want to get your view of things like Shapella and what have you, and just kind of this change in how and what Ethereum has into what it has become. Do you think it's heading in the right direction? Is this the way you think it should go?
So generally, yes, but way too slow. So if you think about 2014, we planned to start with proof of stake, but then like 6 months or so before the launch, said, well, it's too complicated. Let's start with proof of work, and then let's push proof of stake 1 year later, maybe in 2016, which obviously didn't happen. And so it did take much, much longer. So Ethereum is still under development, and I can understand also some critics from the Bitcoin world. Bitcoin core or Bitcoin layer 0, if you or layer 1, however you want to call it, is basically done. So all attempts to change it failed, and so everything is happening now on top. And that's also why Bitcoin is actually a nice store of value or currency, because Bitcoin is creating exactly this, a currency which needs a blockchain to exist. For Ethereum, the goal was another one. We wanted to create a platform for decentralized applications. Much more was needed for this: smart contract, decentralized storage, messaging, and so on. We had a vision of how this would work, including proof of stake, sharding, and all of this. We are not done yet. But I envision that within, let's say, 2 or 3, maybe 5 years, once we have sharding, then layer 1 Ethereum will be done. And there is such a thing as done. You see it in Bitcoin, you see it as simple things with email protocol, SMTP, or LaTeX for print. There are protocols which are done. And I think at that point, that's maybe the 2008 moment for Ethereum, when layer 1 is frozen, the protocol will not be changed anymore, and all the development is happening on layer 2. And at that point, also Ether as a virtual currency becomes as predictable and stable as Bitcoin is today. But we are just in a different development stage and also have a different goal of what Ethereum should become. That sometimes leads to conflicts or misunderstanding between maybe Bitcoin forks and Ethereum forks.
And that you think is taking too long because, Bitcoin basically has been where it's been, at least got where it is currently a while ago, whereas Ethereum still seems to, as you said, it's still kind of like, feels like it's the early stages, even though it's been around almost as long as Bitcoin now.
Ironically, the problem is that the price of Ether went too high too quick, because then the value of the Ethereum blockchain was so high that you cannot just fix or like changes so quickly. There's much more consensus to be built around the mining community, developers, DeFi app developers, users, and so on. And since the value is so high, developers are very fearful of making changes, rightfully so, because you don't want to wreck $1 billion network. So, and because of this, the progress became much slower. But on the other side, it's a good reason to be slow, just because so many people are using it and the price was going up.
Christoph, 7 years after the DAO hack, we have DAOs popping up all over the place, and they're experiencing pain points with voter apathy, centralization, and regulation, DAOs being served on Discord. In your opinion, what are they doing right, and where is there room for improvement?
So I think a misunderstanding is that the DAO can be used for product development or similar to a startup, and you use the DAO tokens for fundraising. I'm not a fan of this idea anymore. I think DAOs are very good for maintaining protocols, for maintaining public goods. If your product or protocol has become something like a public good with lots of users, it needs to be not changed all the time, and you need a very conservative governance, then a DAO is the right approach. But if you want to start with a product, like we did at Slock.it, we wanted to build something like a decentralized Airbnb. And in hindsight, I think creating a DAO for doing this was a wrong approach. So today, there's still some startups who think they start with a DAO to build a product, but it should be the other way around. Build a product or protocol. Once it's big, you can think about moving towards a DAO for governance. Similar to ENS, they did it very well.
Christoph, thank you so much for joining us this morning. That was Christoph Jentzsch, CEO of corpus.ventures. If you want to hear more about the DAO hack of 2016, you can read about that on CoinDesk.com.